I am so honored and privileged to be doing this, and also pretty intimidated because I'm going to be introducing all these incredible colleagues of mine who have so many talents, and they're such incredible scholars and human beings. In some way, I feel like I'm emceeing Claremont's Got Talent, or like the Great American Book Off or something. And but no judging tonight. It's going to be all celebration of creativity, and we're gonna heap lots of love on all these wonderful people. The way things are going to go is I'm going to introduce each person, each author, and each book, and some of them, many of them are here. Some will be joining us by Zoom. Some will have pre-recorded videos, and I'll try to keep track of who those are. And as we go along, and Isaiah will help me with that, I hope. Isaiah had invited everyone to offer a one-sentence description of their book. Well, that's a hard thing to do. So I'm going to be saying that one sentence, unless the book includes other colleagues from CST that should be mentioned as part of it. Okay. I'll add another sentence or so for those. So does that sound okay? We'll see what happens. First is really my mentor in the position I'm in now, Cheryl Kujawa Holbrook. She has been the dean here, as you all know, for many years, and really forged an incredible path for how to be a dean here, and also a path for how to be a scholar. Cheryl's book is a new, updated, expanded version of Injustice and the Care of Souls, Taking Depression Seriously in Care. In her description, this volume's contributors offer spiritual caregivers a compilation of approaches to the care of souls that bring healing, voice, and wholeness to the marginalized and oppressed. And included in the book are CSD faculty and alums, Nicholas Greer, Jessica Chapman-Lappe, Monica Sanford, Altagracia Perez-Bullard, Joshua T. Morris, Marlene M. Ferrares, and also adjuncts Karina Thomas and Rochelle Robbins. And Cheryl's had a pre-recorded video, and we will see that now.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks to all of you that put this great event together, and I'm sorry I can't be there with you. My name is Cheryl Kujawa Holbrook, and this is my book, Injustice and the Care of Souls, and it was edited between myself and my colleague, Karen B. Montagna. We've started putting edition 1 of this book together in 2008, I think, when we were at the Episcopal Divinity School. This is an entirely new and expanded second edition, and it's full of 27 different articles by ourselves, Professor Greer from CST, and including a bunch of CST alums, Monica Sanford, Altagracia Perez-Bullard, Monica Ferreras, Josh Morris, and Jessica Chapman, to name just a few. So if you're interested in the intersection between spiritual care, pastoral care, and depression, please take a look at our book. Thank you, and have a great evening.
I read them myself, so I'm really grateful to have this introduction. So this book is clearly the most personal and intimate book that I've ever written. And it's very tender for me. It deals with some things I don't often talk about publicly. The truth is, when I first came here 35 years ago, my son was born 6 months after I started. And after a series of events around his birth for a number of different reasons, I all of a sudden became tormented by nightmares, by flashback fragments, by invasions of images of being brutally violated and assaulted. My inner world just went off like an eruption of rage and shame and self-laceration. I began cutting myself. I became suicidal, and to the point where I actually had a breakdown right out on the road out here, and Dr. Bob Edgar came and took me to the hospital, and I ended up in a mental institution. Got out, tried to kill myself again and went back into the mental institution. And when I really hit that rock bottom of finding myself in an insane asylum, I decided to go on a quest. It was a search to find pieces of my past, to put together the child sexual trauma that I had known but had never let myself really engage before. I began searching for emotional and psychological therapeutic resources that would help bring me back to mental stability and regulation, and even to be able to thrive again. And it was a spiritual search. It was a theological search for an understanding of God that could be credible in the face of violation and child abuse in our world. So many of our understandings of God around evil and suffering are really deplorable to somebody who has been abused. I often serve the interests of the perpetrators over the interest of the survivors. And it was a spiritual search. I was looking for spiritual resources that would help me connect with some sacred sense of compassion in this world that could hold the trauma and the pain and the suffering and all of the machinations going into healing, and actually be able to begin to have compassion on myself so that I could heal and recover. And the discoveries that I made along the way were these practices and ways of understanding our inner world that eventually became the compassion practice. It became the work that we do in the Center for Engaged Compassion, and much to my surprise, what had been my torment and my relentless introspection became my life's vocation, became something that could be of meaning and help to others. And this is my life's work at this point. Then about 5 years ago, 25, 30 years after all of this, my sister, 49 years old, going to be a grandmother for the first time, and for various reasons, all of a sudden, she became tormented by nightmares and by hallucinations, by images of beasts trying to violate her, flashbacks beginning to come back. She became self-destructive to the point where she ended up in the mental institution, where she didn't trust a person in this world. Except for me. She asked for me to come up to Eureka to try to be with her in the midst of all of this. So in a heartbeat, Elaine and I went up there to spend time with her, and she was not my sister anymore. I mean, just the Thanksgiving before, she was Linda, and now she was just a tormented shell of herself. And so she began to share with me the things that we had never shared with each other, abuses that we had both known together but had never talked about within the secrecies of our family. And towards the end of that conversation, she just tormented, looked at me and said, "So Frank, you were like this once. You were in a hospital. You were tormented, and you aren't anymore. What did you do to get better?" And in an institution with as tormented as she was, I didn't have a lot to offer. I mean, it wasn't time to tell my story. I didn't have any Cliff Note version. I just said, "Linda, I got good help. We're going to get you good help, and we'll find that support." And a few weeks later, she took her own life, and I was haunted by that. And so the real genesis of this book was, this book is the response to my sister that I wish I could have offered to her. It tells the story, the whole story of what I went through, how I came to terms with the abuse of my past, the resources that I found that genuinely brought healing and recovery. And while I'm telling my story, I'm also telling Linda's story, because both stories are true. Some people find resources that bring life, and some people never do. And both stories are sacred, and both stories are told in this book. So it's a cradle in the arms of compassion, spiritual journey from trauma to recovery, testimony to that Pietà-like compassion that holds all of it, the pain and the joy, the wounded ones, the hopeful ones, all held. And this book is my attempt to hold my sister with that compassion by telling her story as well. So thank you. I got books as well. Happy to sell it, spread the word. I really hope it's a resource for other people who've known suffering and trauma, which is all of us in one way or another, and the people who companion them. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Should also mention that the audio version that Frank speak is out in a few days as well. So you can find that on Amazon, I think, too. Um, our next author is Dr. Marvin Sweeney, and he'll be joining us virtually, zooming in. And Marv is a professor of Hebrew Bible. And the surprising thing about his book is that it's the only one that's showing up tonight. I mean, 3, maybe 4 a year seems to be Marv's norm. But he's always writing amazing material. And his book is 1st and 2nd Samuel, and it's part of the New Cambridge Bible Commentary. And it presents a literary, historical, and theological commentary on 1st and 2nd Samuel that focuses on the portrayals of leadership, both positive and negative, and develops a new theory of composition that posits Northern Israelite authorship for the so-called succession narrative in 2 Samuel 10 through 20 that is so heavily critical of the house of David.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Pleasure to be here. Greetings from Salem, Oregon, as I zoom in. I trust you can all see the share screen I put up with the cover of my new commentary on 1st and 2nd Samuel. It is not yet published. It is scheduled for publication on November 30th, 2023, in the New Cambridge Bible Commentary series published by Cambridge University Press. And I'm told that while the hardback copies are obscenely expensive, that the paperback copies are going to be about $35, and I think digital copies are about the same. And this is a commentary that I really waited for almost a lifetime to write. It goes back to my undergraduate days at the University of Illinois back in the last millennium, when I was a political science major and a religious studies major. I wrote papers on balance of power theory in the ancient Near East for political science, and I wrote my bachelor's thesis on the rise of Davidic kingship, political perspective, in the religious studies department. And so this is sort of a trip back to the past for me to think about these issues, although I've been teaching about them all along. And as Andy said, it covers all the normal critical, historical, literary, textual, etc. issues that you expect from a commentary in a format that's supposed to be readable and relatively short, but it also focuses especially on models of leadership. Part of my argument is that the book of Samuel was written not simply to try to record the history of the rise of kingship, which it presents, but also to teach readers models of either poor leadership in many cases or good leadership in many cases. And so what you see in the commentary and in the books of Samuel are models, for example, of the high priest Eli at the sanctuary at Shiloh in the first chapters of Samuel, who's presented as a completely incompetent leader in ancient Israel. He doesn't recognize that Hannah is a woman in distress and in prayer, thinks she's a drunk, which may express his own particular preoccupation, can't really control his sons who abuse their priestly office, and eventually gets fired by God and an unnamed prophet who tells him your priesthood's going to be replaced by another house. We see Samuel, who is a competent leader and guides Israel through the pre-monarchic period and defends the country in doing so. We see Saul, who's presented in a mixed fashion, that you see two very positive stories about Saul. One where he finds kingship while looking for his father's lost asses, and the other where he saves the city of Yabesh Gilad from destruction by Nahash, king of the Ammonites. He was a hero, and yet his narratives are also presented in a framework that warns the reader. Watch out for the abuses of kingship. Watch out for the abuses of power. Watch out for when Saul begins to condemn people and turn against them. One can always change from hero to villain. And then you see in 1 Samuel 16, all the way through about 2 Samuel 9, the rise of David to kingship. And when you read these narratives, David is presented as the quintessential leader. He can do no wrong. God shows grace to him the entire time. He makes all the right decisions for the country and eventually becomes king of both first Judah and Israel in a combined kingdom of two major elements. But then after you see David's rise to kingship and his establishment of Jerusalem as the capital of his kingdom and the place for the Ark of the Covenant of God, which will later become the site of the temple in Jerusalem, when you get to 2 Samuel 10, and especially through 2 Samuel 20, you see a very different picture of David, who's willing to betray his loyal soldiers in the army, has an adulterous affair with Bathsheba, the wife of his loyal soldier Uriah the Hittite, arranges for Uriah's murder after Bathsheba becomes pregnant and he can't cover up the pregnancy anymore. He's really quite a piece of garbage when you read these narratives. And it has an effect on his own sons, who model their own behavior after their father. His oldest son, Amnon, and presumed heir, rapes his half-sister Tamar. Amnon's brother, Avimelech, murders him for doing so. And in both these cases, rape and murder, David doesn't say a word, which any proper leader should do something, say something, and bring these issues to justice. David does nothing. And the result is Avimelech ultimately revolts against him. Avimelech ends up not only driving his father across the Jordan River, but ultimately David defeats him in battle, and Avimelech is killed by David's general Joab, all because David was not a model leader, and that wore off on his sons. Nearly lost his entire dynasty and lost much of his family. In any case, this is a commentary that thinks not only about what's presented in the past, but what do we think about in the present? How do we, as readers, whether we're academics or whether we're clergy or administrators or students or what have you, how do we think about models of leadership? My commentary on Samuel models that in the commentary, raises those questions for the reader. And God willing, I expect to be teaching a course on Samuel in fall 2024. Sorry to say there aren't copies on the table for you to look at. It's not published yet, but it should be available through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and everything else sometime maybe around late November or early December. So thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. You got questions? Let me know.
Our next author is Dr. Isaiah Young. He's assistant professor of spirituality and associate dean of students here at CST. His book, which is an internationally noted award-winning volume, Multiracial Cosmotheandrism, a practical theology of multiracial experiences. This book critically examines the ways multiracial spiritual lives and experiences from North America contribute toward the work of racial and planetary justice. And as I mentioned, it received the 2022 the National Ramon Panicar Prize for the English language.
All right, well, this is such a delight and privilege to be here with you all. Thank you for making space tonight. My book was really a big thing for me. It's my first book. And yeah, thank you. It really was birthed thanks to this community here at CST. Some of you may know I was a PhD student here at CST. I graduated in 2020, the pandemic class. And this book really was a rewrite of my dissertation. And the core of it was really connected to my life at the time when I was navigating and working in diversity and equity work in a predominantly white Christian university and attempting to make sense of my own mixed race experience. I identify as mixed race, as multiracial. My father is Chinese Malaysian. My mother is Mexican American. So I say I'm a Chexican. And both of my parents are here tonight. Yeah, I can't look too long, I'll get emotional. I just want to say, you know, this book in some ways was an attempt to honor the love and sacrifice, the courage it's taken you both to walk through your own partnership and to do it empowered by the divine. So thank you for your witness in my life. And of course, I have many who are here to thank my wonderful dissertation committee, the chair of my project, Dr. Frank Rogers Jr., Dr. Cheryl Kujawa Holbrook, Dr. Nicholas Greer. I was a TA to our dean, Andrew Dreitzer, during my journey, and of course, our president emeritus, Dr. Jeffrey Kwan, who all of them would sit down with me one-on-one and take time to encourage me to keep going through the long, arduous journey that PhD programs are. And so many others from CST who really contributed to this project. Dr. Sharon Jacob, Dr. Johanna Juncker, all of the relationships and conversations, again, in the rewriting process, submitting it to a prize. It was a lot of times I didn't know if the end was in sight. And so I'm thankful for those friendships. On a personal level, this book really details my attempt to create a brand new spiritual formation program and a virtual retreat for other mixed race identifying individuals to explore possibilities for bridging spirituality with racial justice. I focused my project on also those who were situated in predominantly white Christian universities and was amazed at how all of the participants in my program had never entered into a space where they were invited to reflect deeply on the racialized dimensions of their experience, and especially from the contemplative posture. So in summary, working on this project taught me so much, but most importantly, I think the power of collective contemplation, working together, engaged in the fullness of our lives and our hopes and dreams and yearnings, and the possibilities of alternatives to the dominant ways of being in the world. So I'm so grateful for this community to allow the project to be what it is. And I know that without it, it wouldn't be. So thank you very much.
The next author is Dr. Andrew Davis, and like Isaiah, he's a graduate of CST. He's also an adjunct at CST and mostly teaches in process studies. He'll be zooming in, and his book is Metaphysics of Exolife, toward a constructive Whiteheadian cosmotheology. And this book offers a constructive philosophical response to historian Stephen J. Dick's naturalistic cosmotheology from within the process metaphysics of Alfred North Whitehead. Let's see if we can get Andrew on the line.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Andy, and good evening, everybody. Got to say, it's great to see many of you, friends, colleagues of Claremont School of Theology, even if just virtually here. So I'm coming to you from my office here in Santa Rosa, California, just a number of hours north from you all. So great to be here. I appreciate the invitation, and congratulations certainly to the faculty for these books that truly sound excellent. So I'm looking forward to, in time, reading each of them. Well, one of my privileges really as program director, as lead researcher of the Center for Process Studies, is to keep my finger on the pulse of contemporary conversations, I'd say contemporary debates, contemporary questions that are cutting edge and that intersect layers of philosophy, science, theology, and religion, and to try to do so in a way that adds the perspective, the reach and relevance of process thought, process philosophy, theology, Whitehead's thought, but of course beyond Whitehead as well. Now, one of those questions, one of the debates that's being re-energized as of late is this question of other worlds and extraterrestrial life. I would assume that some of you are like me. You've raised this question. Wondered about whether or not we are alone in this universe. You wondered whether life and mind might not be overflowing in this universe. If you're like me, you've raised certain philosophical and theological questions with respect to that question as well. So it's interesting to note, although it's an ancient conversation, in the last 5 years, more than that as well, but we've seen an explosion of recent literature, philosophical and theological literature that are endeavoring certain justifications of this conversation. They're discussing the history of the conversation and certain implications philosophically and theologically with respect to the conversation. And it's a wonderful array of literature. Would recommend it to all of you, and happy to recommend texts. And as I began reading this literature, I noticed a big hole within it, namely that there has been no sustained treatment of this topic from within the perspectives of process philosophy and theology. And I consider that rather unfortunate for at least 2 reasons. The first would be that process theology has always been a tradition of cosmic theological reflection. That's certainly been the case from those process theologians coming out of the Claremont tradition, but also beyond it. And the second reason I think this sort of scholarly neglect has occurred and is unfortunate is because process philosophers and theologians have not been silent on this issue. In fact, there's a fascinating history that I've detailed that brings this to light in a way I think that will add to the conversation in a productive way. So this is all just sort of a backdrop to my book, Metaphysics of Exolife, which more narrowly focused is a constructive philosophical critique of NASA's former chief historian, that is Stephen J. Dick, who's a good friend of mine now. But for a number of years, Steve Dick has offered his naturalistic theology as a proposal or an indicator as to the directions that philosophy and religion might need to change in light of a biological universe, that is, a universe where life and mind are overflowing. And so I'm engaging narrowly with Steve's work, with some of the principles he developed with respect to his naturalistic cosmotheology. I'm critiquing them in a constructive fashion, wanting to push him deeper towards the level of metaphysics with respect to his principles. And I find that Whitehead gives a number of resources that are valuable in doing that. Let me just also say more broadly, the 2 appendices in the books, Appendix A is a historical witness to the prevalence of statements that have been made by process philosophers and theologians with respect to this topic. And Appendix B is actually a republication of the first sustained article on the topic from the perspective of a well-known process philosopher and theologian, and that was Lewis Ford, writing in 1968, just presumably in view of the moon landing. And that the title of his article was Theological Reflections on Extraterrestrial Life. I'm happy to say that the only place that article can be found now, notwithstanding the archives of the Center for Process Studies, is in my text too. So you might read the book and not like the book, but I would suggest you buy it, if only for Lewis Ford's article. It's truly excellent. Let me let me also say that this book is a small part of a much larger project that Roland Faber and I have been working on for a number of years. We had a conference out of which this book and a much larger text is going to be surfacing in February. And the title of that text is Astrophilosophy, Exotheology, and Cosmic Religion, Extraterrestrial Life in a Process Universe. And this is really a monumental text, asteroidal, if you want to call it that, 600 plus pages. But it really is the first sustained collective scholarly exploration of this topic from within process philosophy and theology. So we have a number of philosophers, scientists, theologians writing in this book and discussing various angles of this discussion from the perspective of process philosophy. The final thing I'll say is there's a great historical lineage to this interest of mine as well, and it goes all the way back to 2017 when I was a research assistant and teaching assistant for Roland Faber. And we developed a course titled Religions and Exolife, where we, among other things, discussed some of the history, the science, the philosophy involved in this long-standing debate from antiquity all the way till today. So I love this topic. It all started in Claremont. I've always admired and loved Claremont School of Theology for being bold in its theological investigation, and I hope that this book contributes to that. So it's available on Amazon, and would love to see what you think. Happy to discuss it, and I appreciate the invite again. So thanks, everyone, and good to see you all.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Our next author is Dr. Samuel Lee. And Sam is Edna and Lowell Craig Professor of Practical Theology, Spiritual Care and Counseling. And he also serves as the director of the Carnville Institute. His book is called Justice Matters. It's co-written with Danjuma Gibson. And it's called Justice Matters, Spiritual Care and Pastoral Theological Imaginations in Times of the COVID-19 Pandemic. It is a collection of 9 pastoral theological reflections that address complex theological issues relating to structural inequalities in our society, exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And Sam has a pre-recorded video for us.
Breaking news, stay at home. That is the order tonight from 4 state governors.
Today we're covering the coronavirus crisis in the hardest hit country in the world. Reports of coronavirus have spread across the U.S. So have
Now, the second of a 2-part Race Matters report from Paul Salman.
Next author is Christopher Jane Miller. And Chris is the co-founder and vice president of academic affairs at Arianta Institute and also a visiting professor in Jain Studies here at CST. His book is Embodying Transnational Yoga, Eating, Singing, and Breathing in Transformation. This book is a multi-sited ethnography of transnational yoga that obliges us to look beyond postural practice, asana, in modern yoga research in order to consider three alternative understudied categories of transnational yoga practice, which include food, music, and breathing. And he has also a pre-recorded video for us.
Hi, everyone from Zurich. Christopher Jane Miller here, and thank you to Isaiah for allowing me the opportunity to briefly present my new book to you in this book celebration. I'm really overwhelmed to see the number of books that have been recently published at CST, and also honored to be able to slide mine into this event. So I'm sorry I'm not there with you live, but I just published a couple days hot off the press, Embodying Transnational Yoga, Eating, Singing, and Breathing in Transformation, as you see there on the title. This book came about through my many years of yoga practice, 15 years to be exact. I've been practicing yoga. I had a lot of transformative experiences through my yoga practice over the years, and I've practiced several different systems of yoga. And when I say yoga, I don't just mean the postures, and that's what brought this book about. A lot of the yoga that I did involved postural practice, as you would expect to see in a yoga studio, for example, but it also involved a lot of other practices, ethical practices, including being vegetarian and eventually becoming vegan, which was part of the practice as I learned. Also doing different breathing practices that are associated with yoga, as well as a lot of singing and chanting of mantras and sacred sounds. These are things that are commonly found in yoga practice in transnational yoga all over the world. But in my field, modern yoga studies are under-researched. And so this book meant to take these categories of practice, how we eat, how we sing, how we breathe, and putting them in a very critical framework. And so the second part that brought this book about is that after I had all these really wonderful experiences that I still treasure and consider so foundational to who I am, I entered into graduate school because I wanted to learn more. And then I was given these kind of critical lenses for looking at these things. Who is practicing? Why are they practicing? The privilege, the colonialism, the racism, all the things that come up in yoga as they do everywhere else. And so what this book attempts to do is show the transformative power of yoga, but at the same time show who's practicing the yoga and putting yoga, these various yoga practices, into critical analytical frameworks, which has never been done before in the field of modern yoga studies. So I'm very excited about this book. What's one thing that surprised me along the way? I think the surprise was at that point when I got into graduate school, that this thing that I thought was pure and untouched tradition, yoga tradition, was actually full of a rich colonial history that had shaped the practices that I was doing at the time, which were nevertheless transformative. And so, as it is with all students of theology, religious studies, it was very difficult for me to confront the difficult historical and anthropological realities of modern yoga and who's practicing yoga, including myself, and situating myself in that practice and in those critical analytical frameworks. So thanks once again for letting me share, and I look forward to hopefully seeing many of you at the AAR this year. Please reach out to me. I'll be in San Antonio. See you later.
That is the bulk of our program. It's our final author in that respect, and I think we should give a round of applause for everybody again. This is extraordinary. And for CST to be able to host and form these kind of scholars and activists and public theologians, extraordinary. The final piece of this night is going to be led by Isaiah. Isaiah.
All right, everyone. Well, we have, thank you, Dean Dreitzer, for emceeing for us tonight. Yeah, give him a round of applause. And we have one final surprise this evening, and that is to present to you all here for the very first time a project which has been in the making for over 3 years. It is something extremely special and near to my heart, and there are many who have contributed to the project through written chapters who are also here, including my wonderful colleague and co-editor, Dr. Eric Kyle, who will actually be sharing a few words in a moment over Zoom. But this project is one which celebrates and honors the life and work of someone very dear to our CST community, Dr. Frank Rogers, Jr. And as you might be aware, there are countless people from all over the world who love and admire and respect Frank. So this has been really difficult to keep hidden from you for years, literally multiple years. And so Frank's birthday is coming up next month, and he's been serving this community for 35 years. And so we owe a lot to Frank and his courage, his compassion, his love, his service, his dedication. And so this is just a small way to acknowledge, I can't look at you, I'm gonna cry, to acknowledge the monumental commitment and devotion that you've exemplified. And so we wanted to share this when most of our community was here, intensive week. And so here we are. So this project is a book. Johan, can I ask for your assistance with it? Thank you so much. Beautiful. Thank you, Johan. Can we give it up for Johan too? Thank you so much, Johan, for all of your help. So this book is entitled The Pulse of Life, Exploring the Power of Compassion in Transforming the World, Essays in Honor of Frank Rogers, Jr. So here it is for the virtual screen. It includes 10 different contributors, many of whom were students to Frank, colleagues to Frank, and others who are deeply loved by him and who he loves. So this really just shows a small glimpse into the transformative and influential impact that Frank has had on so many, and the ripple effects of your life to a world in desperate need of compassion. Frank has played a huge role, of course, in my life as a teacher, scholar, and as a human being. Frank, I'll never forget, of course, your support, your prayers with me through the time of my life enduring a severe auto accident, which is 5 years to this week. And there was a lot of difficult moments in that for me, and you were always there, and I'll never forget that. So thank you. I hope that this book, again, can speak to, again, a small piece of the gratitude we have for you. And at this time, I would love to also invite, if he's present virtually, Dr. Eric Kyle, who's a co-editor of the volume, to just say a few words as well.
Yeah, I think I'll need the mic put up there. All right, can you hear me okay? All right, there we go. We're going to change the energy here just a little bit. How many of you can hear this? Yeah, does this bring back memories? I can't see you. All I'm doing is staring at a microphone. So there we go. So this in the chapter that Andy wrote in this book, he talks about the Muse brothers. And I think I was there for the birth of the Muse Brothers and the world premiere of the Muse Brothers. It was a class in 2008 or 2009, and it was on creativity and spirituality. And in this class, Frank and Andy had us, as part of our homework, to spend at least 2 hours every week just doing some type of creative engagement. It could be whatever we wanted. And the culmination of this work, week after week, was to present our creative works to the class at the very end in the chapel there at CST. And so, you know, that final class, we had students who were singing, we had students who were sharing some of their sketches. We had one student who had never really picked up a paintbrush in her life and spent the whole semester watching Bob Ross videos and painted this amazing, beautiful mountain-esque landscape with a cabin nestled in this valley that she gave as a gift to Frank. And so as after that, we had a chance to kind of walk around and do kind of a gallery walk and kind of look at each other's artistic expressions and talk with each other, chat with each other about the process. And at the end of that, things as we kind of did that, we walked around and we kind of, you know, got to the point where we're just kind of muddling around, honestly, mingling around. But we noticed that Frank and Andy had disappeared. So we're like, well, what happened to our faculty? And that's when the lights dimmed and this music that I just played erupted into the chapel. And out of the back room comes Frank and Andy in full Blues Brothers regalia. I'm talking fedora, sunglasses, full black suits. I'm pretty sure, Frank, that this isn't some type of false memory, but I'm pretty sure Frank did a full-on cartwheel as he was making his way to the stage. It was just all-out craziness. And this class, this class was, it was just an amazing class. And it's just one of so many examples of how Frank, it doesn't just teach and write about engaged compassion, that Frank embodies it with the very fabric of his being. And so this book is a collection, a small sample of people who have been deeply touched by your life and by your work, Frank, by the compassion that you have and how engaged it was. I was a part of the Narrative Pedagogy Project where we were going into community centers, leading youth drama programs. And it's that type of engaged, embodied compassion that has stayed with myself and each of the authors in this text. And you'll find stories in this text of people writing about their own personal journeys, some of them sharing some of the same traumas that you have experienced, Frank, and their recovery as a result of your ministries. Some of them sharing personal stories, kind of behind the scenes looks into Frank's own personal life. Some of the stories, such as my own, are just taking Frank's scholarship and applying it to my own scholarship, my own teaching, my own ministry, kind of demonstrating how Frank's impact has lived on through us to the people and communities that we're in ministry with now. And so really, Frank, we just want to say a huge debt of gratitude. And this book is just an expression, an embodied version of the compassion and appreciation that we have for you. So we just want to say a huge thank you and hope that you will feel and be blessed by this book just as we have been blessed by you. And of course, we give all the thanks and praise to our God. Back to you, Isaiah.
Thank you, Dr. Kyle. And so there are many who we could have asked to share, but there are just two more who we'd like to hear from and invite up who are deeply close to Frank. And so the first one I'd love to invite up to say a few words is Dean Andrew Dreitzer.
I had to check with Frank to make sure what stories I could and couldn't tell. It's fact that I would not be here if it weren't for Frank. And I mean, here at CST for one thing, and I completely blew my interview here. And then Frank convinced the committee to bring me back for a second one. And he probably convinced them just to hire me, in fact, because it wasn't that great of an interview the second time. And I would probably not be here in other ways too if it weren't for Frank. Emotionally, even maybe physically, he has helped me through so many traumatic events in my life. I can't say enough. And we also had a lot of fun together. The Muse Brothers time, he taught me the harmonica, he played, he sang, he rewrote the Blues Brothers songs to compassion lyrics. We choreographed dances, I danced up and down the aisle through the chapel. It was amazing. We traveled to places throughout the world. We met with peace activists in Israel and Palestine. We put on Frank led us in a Zimbabwe in a healing and reconciliation retreat for tribal leaders and Christian pastors. And it turned out two of Mugabe's spies, Secret Service. And we took the compassion, Frank took us with the compassion practice to Congress and presented that, and see how that worked out. That was good. So it's been fun. And we worked for years on putting the compassion practice together, his practice, making it come into the world to be able to be teachable. Best parts of my life. And then I had this conference in 2008, and it was a multi-religious conference on neuroscience and spiritual practices with 5 different religious traditions presenting leading spiritual practices. There were 250 people here for those 3 days. And we had neuroscientists interpreting the neurophysiologically possibly what happened with the practices. And afterwards, this woman came up to me and said, "Can I meet with you? I'm really engaged in embodied practices, and I work with science, and I'm an educator, and I teach contemplative practices. Can I meet with you?" I said, "Sure." So we set a time. She came to my office, and we chatted for an hour. And then I was like, "She has got to be part of our center. It's amazing." We left, and I thought maybe Frank's next door to my office. Maybe he's in the office. So I knocked on the door. He came out. I said, "Frank, she's amazing. We really have to have her work with us." So we just talked a little bit more, and she left. And I said, "Frank, here's all the things that she does." I laid it all out, and he said, "But does she have a life partner?" It was Elaine. And that was the beginning of that story. Yeah. Thank you for everything you've done for me here. Yeah.
And lastly, but perhaps most important, we have another contributor, Frank's partner, Dr. Elaine Doherty, to come up and also say a few words. We'd love to invite you up. Yes.
I think one of my favorite pieces to that story, Andy, was when then Frank and I first started dating. He said it's just so amazing to see this person that's always been such a confirmed monk be just not a monk. But I'm just going to turn around a little bit and like pat myself on the back, because the fact that this was coming tonight for Frank, I can never, ever, ever keep a secret from that man. And when we were coming into this week with the release last night, and then, and then he had no idea this was coming tonight. And just the fact of being able to share all that with him was just amazing. But I was also blessed to be a contributor for the book. And one of the things that I was able to write about that I think is uniquely my own kind of position here is that I come to know Frank on so many different levels. And first, when I had met Andy, and I just at that time finished my first book, and it was on neuroscience and spirituality. And I was really into how spirituality can lead to healing, but it really needs to be in reforming the brain in a really specific way. And to be able to be a colleague and be able to really give validation to the types of practices that they were doing, that they could really be fundamentally healing, was just a gift to be able to see what I knew from an academic sense, but also to be able to see it being embodied in real life. So, on that level. And then we became to start doing retreats together, and also involved in his classes here and doing a few adjunct classes of my own, was able to see all the healing done on personal levels. Right, so we moved from this academic level to the personal level, and the personal stories and all the retreats, and being able to see the healing of the students and the healing of the retreatants was an amazing process for me to be able to witness and be part of, and then even to come down even on the even more personal level is to be able to see Frank do his own work, because he's not a person that says, do this. He's a person that says, I did this and see if you can try it, it might work for you. And I've never seen anybody work so hard on their own healing and have it manifest and just see him become a lighter person. You know, that's all. Frank, Kate and I were talking last night, and it's just like the lightness of his being is shining through now, and especially with writing this last book, the healing in this man has been amazing. And to know, you know, read his new book coming out, to see what he's been through in his life, and to be able to be sitting here now and telling his story to the world, but also be in such a grounded space with it all is just beyond amazing. And I feel more than blessed to be able to witness it at all those different levels. So babe, I love you, and pat me on the back, Matt.
So we're incredibly grateful to be able to share this book, which is now officially out today, 3 years in the making. So thankful to Claremont Press for being the publisher of it. Dr. Andrew Schwartz, who's on our faculty, was instrumental in helping it become a reality. I'll just read to you briefly the contributors. You'll recognize probably a lot of these names. Cheryl Kujawa Holbrook, myself, Eric Kyle, Mark Chung Hearn, Natasha Huang, who's here tonight, also with us. Yeah, Jung Hee Kim, Kate Wilson, who's here, Nancy Fowler, Elaine Doherty, Andy Dreitzer. So that are the contributors to the book, yes. So now it's time, Frank. We get to actually present the book to you. So would you please come up and we can share this small gift with you. He's not prepared at all for this, but I'd love to just invite him to say any words you'd like to share. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't have receptacles in my being to take this in. I mean, this is stunning. Stunning. I mean, and miracles happen. I mean, I just honestly hadn't thought about it, but until I was getting up. But I mean, I broke down just out in that parking lot at the corner there. A car just pulled up, and 100 yards down, 35 years later, I mean, here we are. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. It is a miracle that this is happening. And I mean, the honor is mine. The honor is mine. I mean, I wouldn't be here vocationally if it weren't for Andy. Absolutely, it was Andy that legitimated my own journey, my relentless introspection and trying to find something that would help me, a little bit of healing, and that was actually an academic gift. That was research into the soul that we could actually teach and work with. I mean, what an incredible gift that was. And I wouldn't be here in any way, the way I am now, without my partner, my beloved, my soulmate, workmate, playmate, best friend, Elaine. It's true. Andy was over the moon that she could explain all the physiological reasons why the compassion practice worked. And I said, okay, but is she single? I mean, that's really all we need to know right now. And it went from there. And I mean, the absolute privilege of being able to work with all of the students and colleagues in the different programs, but especially the doctoral programs. I mean, that honor is mine. I mean, I get to sit here and see you all blossoming and blooming And that is an extraordinary gift to me, that you all would take the time to actually, it's like I mean, I'm not an academic that gets a fellowship. I mean, it just blows me away. But thank you. I mean, that's all I can say. Thank you.
And we did not plan the timing with his personal memoir the day after for this book, but we're really pleased for today. So thank you, Frank, for allowing us to put you on the spot. And with that, friends, that will bring our scheduled programming to a close. So again, we want to thank everyone again for helping make this night possible, for staying with us through the surprise element. Thank you all for being here in person. And we do have just a small gift for those of you who didn't get a cup for the Route 66 cup. What's that? Well, so it's we do have an open access copy that's totally release free, digital. So yes, you could, because of Claremont Press, you can access the book, The Pulse of Life, digitally for free. It's an open access book, so we'd love to have you engage that in any way possible. And then you can also buy a copy if you'd like to do that. Yes, $14.99 if you'd like a paperback and you want to support Claremont. That would be great. We'd love that.
If the people that are here want a copy, the administration will make sure you get a free copy.
All right. Now you heard it from our VP of operations. You get a copy if you'd like a physical one. Thank you.
If it's open access, I'll put it in the DTL.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. And then we have one more small gift, which is if you didn't get a cup, the Route 66 cup from our event a few months ago. We have a few left, maybe not one for everybody, but if you didn't get one, if you'd like one, we have our student Adriana who will help make sure that you can have one of those on your way out. So thank you so much again for being here, and I wish you all a wonderful evening.
Sorry. No, I was gonna say, I'll just.
You can get it for sure. Yeah, exactly.